All right, from gym rat to lab rat, CU is now studying the effect marijuana has on the fitness obsessed.
Now, the research isn't finalized, but weightlifters and runners told our Gary Brode their experience has been less pain, more gain.
Ben Bennett is pressing 250 pounds. It's a lightweight for the personal trainer. He also competes in strongman.
This is a strongman. This is a log.
What's more impressive than lifting a grown man and then some over his head? Bennett is doing it high.
I feel like there's that stigma where people like kind of sit on the couch and zone out.
For Bennett, that's not the case.
It's easier to kind of focus.
Weed and workouts seem to be a growing trend around athletes. World-class sprinter Sha'Carri Richardson was barred from the Olympics for testing positive for marijuana. The NBA has suspended drug testing for it. What a pass.
What we're looking for is how they feel during exercise.
That answer, among others, has led CU Boulder to study the cannabis effect on exercise.
One thing that I think is really telling is the huge amount of interest among our participants.
Nothing at all.
Around 20 people have already participated in the study, which started in late summer.
Then yeah.
Heather Mashuti was one of the volunteers who ran on a treadmill for 30 minutes, 3 times throughout the course of about a month. Their second time is when the subject smokes a joint with either THC or CBD. They are not told which.
I came back the second time, and that was the time that I had taken the product. The van, picks me up. I get the product from a outside vendor. The campus doesn't, have anything really to do with that. And then I get on the treadmill and I do another 30-minute run.
Mashuti doesn't use marijuana recreationally, but does use it when training for ultra marathons.
You are less identified with, your internal thoughts like, oh, my knee hurts. Oh, this sucks. It's too hot, right? And you're more interested, or at least I am, in the environment.
Right. Running high is something Josiah Hesse knows so well, he wrote a book on it.
The name of the book is Runner's High.
He says the interest of exercising while using marijuana, especially among runners, was too popular to ignore.
The people that I spoke with were putting numbers at like 60 to 80% of professional athletes are using cannabis in some form.
Hesse believes marijuana can provide both physical and mental benefits to your workout.
Pain is not just the pain you feel in your ankle, it's also your emotional reaction to that pain. And something interesting that cannabis does as a pain reliever is it doesn't shut down the sensation of pain. It sort of dampens down the emotional reaction to that pain.
This study at CU is still nearly 2 years from completion.
Yeah.
But Dr. Angela Bryan is already seeing something we're all wondering.
It seems like this is definitely something that's feasible for people to do in a way that's safe, which is kind of one of the questions that we had.
It's a controversial thing to admit, but not always. I don't think it is safe. My rule is don't try new things stoned. Get to know the activity very well first before you try integrating cannabis with it.
I don't feel it's dangerous.
I'm Gary Brode.
Does it have the potential to be dangerous? Yes.
Denver 7.
Interesting.
Thanks for choosing to take flight. You said you don't have many vices. Like myself, I don't drink. I haven't drank since lockdown.
Yeah.
Not that I don't like drinking. I just know I can't do it right now, like with a kid and stuff. Like it just doesn't work.
Fair.
So I was just really fascinated to learn a little bit more about one of your vices and how that plays into your life, how it benefits you, and then how you tie that into your athlete lifestyle.
I love it. No, I love this. And it's actually one of the first times I've actually spoken about it on like a pod setting. I'm a big fan of cannabis. I've been a fan of consuming THC and CBD even throughout college. It helped me a lot through dealing with injuries, dealing with anxiety, dealing with just mental state in that sense. I'm not a big fan of utilizing pills. I don't take ibuprofen for anything. I don't take allergy medicine. I take I don't take many pills at all. I'm a believer that things that come from the earth, things that come from soil and from the ground, just like mushrooms, just like cannabis, it's things that are not as harmful as people think. To your point, every human has their own vice. I'm not a big drinker. I never have been. I don't mind taking a couple of drinks here and there, but I just don't enjoy how I feel after. When I use cannabis or use weed just in general, like I feel at a state that's more relaxing, a state that I'm able to wind down. And it's like what we talked about earlier. Like, it's so easy for me to be on all the time because I don't know how to separate work and what's pleasure and what's chill, right? So using cannabis is always more of a night routine for me. It's how I switch my brain from thinking that I need to be on all the time to kind of get into this mode of relaxation and kind of like calmness in that sense, right? And I think for any human, like you know, it might not be cannabis, it might be drinking an herbal tea, who knows? But I think finding that separation point where when you're on all the time, it starts to then burn out as well. And if you don't have that ability to then separate what's work and what's pleasure and all those things, then you're going to find yourself kind of being burnt out. So for me, it was always that mode of like, one, it kind of sets me into my nightcap routine and it allows me to kind of get into that relaxed state. And it's been something that, it's funny. People are always like, they are shocked. People are shocked when they hear that I'm a runner and I do all these, and they're like, dude, does this impact your lungs? Like, how do you keep running? And I'm like, it's not impacting your lungs as much as you think. It's all a psychology thing. At the end of the day, like, obviously smoking anything is probably not the best for your lungs, but there's no tobacco in it, right? If you're smoking just flower, and it's not as harmful on your actual lungs. Like, there's not many people that have died from overuse of marijuana, right? But how many people every single day die from tobacco use? So it's a different game, but it's also something that I understand. I could stop right now. I'm not connected to it in that sense where I feel like, oh my God, I can't live without like weed, right? It's like, I could literally stop right now and be clean for however long I need to. And I've done it many times where it's almost a battle for myself, a test to myself. Like, I don't need it. It's just, I enjoy it. Yeah. And it's one of those things where I think in life, more people should do things that they enjoy.
Yeah, for sure. It helps you put it down, like all the thoughts of work and the growth and all that. It helps you.
Mark, so much of that, man. And it's a mixture of, and sometimes I get my most creative thoughts when I'm quote unquote after I smoke or after I use cannabis. And it's one of those things where it puts my mind in a different place. And same thing with mushrooms, bro. I've tested more psilocybin since I've lived in Austin than I ever have, bro.
And like a microdose or
in a microdose way. And I've macrodose, but I typically on every Monday I'll microdose. In the morning after I go run, I'll put a little tincture into my tea, mix it with honey, and I'll put lion's mane in my tea, and I'll start my morning like that.
You didn't put it in our smoothie, did you?
No, not today. Not today. No psilocybin today. But no, I think it's you know, I'm a very curious person. And when there's new science, when there's new technology, when there's new things that are existing, that are coming out, I'm always very aware and I want to learn more about it. And like I said earlier, I'm the type of human that I learn best by doing. I'm a practitioner in everything that I do. So before I make a judgment, before I make an opinion on something, I need to at least try it. And that's what I've done with everything, with drinking, with smoking, with mushrooms, with most things that I've ever done in my life. And I think more people need to have that framework, because it's easy to sit on the sideline and say, oh my God, that guy's a pothead, he's a loser. When in reality, is that actually true? Or is that just this framework that we've created because the war on drugs says that marijuana and mushrooms are these negative things? People have created this framework in their own mind without actually practicing it for themselves in that sense.
Yeah. Question everything.
Question everything, Mark.
Yeah.
Everything.
Yeah. Man, thanks for that. I think that's so interesting, because even the people listening along to this, they might be having some of those thoughts of judgment and stuff. And you know, 10 years from now, this might seem like such a stupid conversation, because
I guarantee it will be.
Knows what it's doing.
And to your point, Mark, like, I've always had these thoughts of, like, when I first got into entrepreneurship, I remember one of my old business partners, we used to like have like creative sessions after, like, while we smoked. And we would always say, like, imagine we could post this right now. Imagine how much, like, how accepting it would be if we posted this right now. But to your point, in 5, 10, 15 years, who knows? That's just going to be another thing where, I mean, shit, we see it now. Joe Rogan smokes with Elon Musk. It's no issue. Joe Rogan's like, right? And he's at the top of the game. So it just shows you that, shit, if Joe Rogan is taking a couple puffs of marijuana and he's also drinking and doing these other things, like, every human needs to work on themselves and figure out what works for them instead of judging what other people are doing. And if you do that, then you're in a place where you're at peace.
Yeah, too right, man. What a perfect way to end the conversation. Man,
it's a pleasure, bro.
Thank you, mate. What an amazing morning I've had.
I'm so glad that you guys came, man. It was super fun.
It was great, man. Really enjoyed it. And I'd love to make Sunday work if we can.
So it's not even a question.
Okay. Awesome. And thanks for having us.
Dude, of course.
Mate, you're a legend. Good luck with everything.
Thank you so much, my friend.
Yeah, awesome.
We'll stay in touch, man. This is not going to be the last hurrah.
Oh, hell no. All right, man. Legend. Thanks, mate.
You have reached your destination.
Hey, it's Mark Whittle. Thanks so much for watching or listening. It's so great to have you a part of the Take Flight movement. Subscribe to the podcast on all platforms, video and audio, to be the first to see new episodes and new conversations with the greatest minds in the world. Follow me at markwhittle_TF on all social platforms, and visit takeflightworld.com to join our growing community of hustlers, performers, and go-getters. I can't wait to see you next time. Until then, stay positive, stay motivated, and of course, take flight.
If you have a 700 plus credit score, you qualify for Chase's new program where you could access up to $150,000 of capital for free at 0% interest rates to fund any business or investment that you want, all in the next 30 days. Chase's new program allows you to access up to $150,000 of free capital for your businesses and investments without needing any tax returns, bank statements, or pay stubs, and it doesn't require an upfront payment either. If that sounds interesting to you, I create a full case study analysis on this new program that Chase is offering and how not only you can access up to $150,000 for free from Chase, but how
So, Matt, I've been wanting to do this for a long ass time. I've been planting the seed, as it were, that I want to do an episode with you specifically about the question of whether marijuana can be a performance enhancing drug. Okay, you're a guy. I mean, I assume you smoke today.
Yeah, today. Yeah, absolutely. I'm pretty high as we speak right now.
Very good.
Yes.
I am jealous. And for people who don't know, and I hope they do know already, your reputation, but how would you describe the sort of player you were in the league?
Probably like 3-and-D before there was coined 3-and-D. Just a hard-nosed defender that had, did a little bit of everything on the dirty work side and defensive side, and then, knocked down shots when I got the opportunity.
Yeah. There's another simpler word that I feel like gets thrown around your scouting report, which is you're an asshole.
Hated to play against me, loved to play with me, is what I've heard from teammates and executives and coaches.
Okay, so if you want to understand the culture of a sport, if you want to find out, for example, why upwards of 80% of the greatest basketball league in the world may smoke weed, you can't really go to the superstar athletes. This is a theory I have. They are simply too famous. They have too much job security. What you really need to do is go to California and sit down with Matt Barnes. Because the most distinguishing thing about Matt Barnes, to me, is his candidness about what it's like to play for 9 different teams over a 14-year NBA career, and also about what it's like to have been, according to my own research here, arguably the biggest stoner in professional basketball. And all of this was back when smoking weed really meant something, by the way. Matt Barnes is from Sacramento County, and he was doing all of this when it was very illegal, back before legal dispensaries, back before all of these stores that have opened up. This was still years and years away from the NBA deciding, finally, to stop testing for weed altogether. You were doing this, by the way, like during, and I think this is a key distinction here when you talk about policy changes, you were doing all of this during David Stern's NBA.
Yeah, it was a different watch back then. Definitely a different watch.
So let's just start from the start. So for you, I want people to really understand where you're coming from, just like even before the NBA.
Yeah.
Chronologically speaking, when does the relationship between marijuana and basketball begin for you?
Man, my dad was dabbled in the streets a little bit. So, I saw drugs at an early age. I was born in 1980. So in the 80s, a lot of people did a lot of different drugs then. But I always remember my dad at the end of the day would smoke a joint, and he also smoked cigarettes, and I hated to smell cigarettes. But I remember when he smoked it, I didn't know what it was at the time, but he would smoke this joint and it would smell different, and he would relax and he'd have a Budweiser and he'd watch something on TV, and that was kind of like the mellow time we would have, and it just always stuck with me. So at 14, I stole some weed from him and tried it, and the first time I got a huge headache, huge headache, but I wasn't a quitter. I jumped back on the horse and kind of found early on, this is 14, 15 years old, it relaxed me, it focused me.
How would you describe that? So when you say it relaxed you, what did you need relaxation from?
It would just allow me to kind of relax and focus and take things step by step and, not overreact and it helped me sleep. So it did a lot of things early on that I couldn't put my finger on, but I knew it just made me feel different and made me feel better. Now there's medical research to back up what I know it's been doing for me since I was a teenager nearly 30 years ago.
When you mentioned that your dad, he was in the business of drugs before this was a business that was allowed.
Right.
So when you think back, just how do you describe it for someone who isn't familiar with what that must have been like?
It was different because it wasn't just weed. It was coke. It was a lot of different. It was the 80s. You know what I mean? So it was interesting because me and my brother and sister all steered away from that. You know, I felt like, but there were some kids. You know, at 5 years old, I'm playing with the neighbor kids because our parents are getting high, and my little friends knock a plate of cocaine over and start eating it, and next thing you know, they're foaming out the mouth. So I'm running to my house to tell our parents that I don't know what. But I'm 5 years old, 6 years old. You know, so I just saw a lot at an early age, and I kind of feel like either if you see it, you're going to steer towards it, or you're going to steer away from it. And I steered away from it. You know, so my goal was to never kind of be back in that kind of situation or environment, and I knew there was more out there. So that was kind of always my go throughout my childhood and high school days, college days, and through the pros.
So the biggest difference between Matt Barnes, even at an early age, stoned and sober, is what? How different are those people, would you say?
I mean, they're not very different. I think at an early age, I think obviously you have to handle what you can handle. You know what I mean? I went to school with a bunch of, excuse me, but I went to school with a bunch of white kids. So they're taking 6-foot gravity bong rips.
We don't use those slurs here, white kids.
So there's 6-foot bong rips, and then there was gravity bongs where we used to take an Alhambra bottle and to cut the bottom of the Alhambra bottle out, make a bowl at the top, submerge it, make a bowl, and then So that's the first time, funny enough, we're talking about a gravity bong. The first time I got high before a game, this is, I think it was in my senior year of high school. We're playing in this tournament, and I won MVP 2 years. I think it's my junior year. I won MVP my freshman, my sophomore year. Dominating first game, big game. Cut school on the Friday of the second game and gets super high. And it was like Teen Wolf. You're turning and everything's coming a little bit behind you and turning, and it's just like, I was too high. I played horrible. My friends were up in the stands laughing at me. I want to say I was averaging like 35, 40 points in this tournament. I had like 4 to 6 points in this tournament. Remember, I airballed 2 layups. It was bad. So I say all that to say, like, I had to figure out what worked for me.
Right.
You know, how much, because, you know, maybe it's more for me and less for someone else, or less for me and more for someone else. So I kind of just found what my why was. First of all, why was I doing it? And then what was my tolerance level to be able to still perform and do it at the same time, because I have to be responsible with it.
Right. So the first time though, you
too far.
When you went Teen Wolf,
deep waters.
Was there a thought as to like, I'm going to see what this is like, I'm going to try this out?
I just didn't think I was going to get that high and it was going to stay that long. Like,
it was an accident.
It happened at 1:30 and the game was at 7. I was still just loaded the whole day. The whole day I was just loaded, and it just, I could cold water pool, nothing could shake it off me, and it was a lot.
When do you realize the Goldilocks of this, right? Okay, too hot, too cold, but just right.
Yeah.
How do you figure out, when do you figure out what just right feels like?
I remember the football season early on, I hurt my foot and kind of kept playing, and it was,
'cause you're also like a star receiver.
Yeah, I was a better football player than basketball. So just, you know, before a game, kind of finding out, okay, you know, half a blunt, what would that do to me? Okay, I can do that. And then, you know, it eventually got to, throughout my career, what I would smoke, you know, whether it was the blunt stage or the joint stage, a joint or a blunt before the game.
And when did you decide it's a blunt or a joint?
Wiz Khalifa actually changed me from blunts, because I was a Swisher Sweet guy for like 20 plus years, and those things are just, those are heavy on your lung, but you don't know how heavy they are until you try something else. So again, I'm someone who, during my time, I prided myself on being really well in shape and never getting tired and always running. So I didn't realize how heavy blunts were on my chest until I switched over to joints. Compliments of my guy Wiz. He just, try this, tasted better, cleaner. It just didn't feel as heavy on my lungs. So I probably crossed over in 2015 and haven't been back since.
Okay, so I want to go back to college though, right? So high school, I can imagine you get away with some stuff because it's high school, and I guess there's not a testing program that's official in high school. But UCLA, I mean, you could have used UCLA.
Yeah, it's a little different.
How would you figure out, this is what I need to do to not get in trouble?
Niacin, I think it was. They said, because you'd hear urban legends of guys on campus, what do you do to get it out of your system? So I stayed on campus for 4 years and had 3 tests, and somehow got by all of them. I just didn't go to one.
That's a pretty good way to not
go to one.
Fail it. To not go.
One was niacin, and then one I drank so much water I felt like I was going to be like pass out. And one was diluted, and it was fine. One I didn't take, and then the niacin flushed me one time. At first, you know, I didn't know who at UCLA smoked, so I used to just be by myself, and there's like a wooded area with steps down to the fraternities. So I used to go back there and smoke by myself because I didn't know who else smoked.
It's relatable in the sense that like you got to go to this like wooded area by yourself because the stakes are
high. No pun intended.
Yo, but for real though, I want people to understand, because this is around what time? What year?
1998, 99, 2000.
Right. So this was like headlines in newspaper stories.
Absolutely. Like real trouble. Like, you know, probably get kicked out of college possibly.
How obvious was it though that you were smoking and playing and evading the tests at the time you were doing it?
I mean, I was just good. I mean, I've always been really self-conscious of, okay, if I'm going to do this, I can't, because I'm public. I'm a functioning smoker, I guess you would call it. Like before I go on ESPN, before I play, like I'm always smoking, but I always have my little kit where I have my toothbrush, my mouthwash, some cologne, a change of clothes, some lotion, because I can't walk around smelling like it all the time. I just understand
this is veteran savvy.
Right, come on, man.
Yes, no, I think functional is a key. It's a key adjective to all of this.
It's got to be, man. It's got to be some balance.
Right. So okay, but the idea that, okay, I have a kit, I have a process.
Yeah.
When did that specific ritual really set in where you're like, I know how to do this?
College, it was, because obviously I knew I had to hide, but you know, once I didn't really, not that I didn't care, I don't want to say that, just once I was kind of more recognizable and in situations and around people that would, because I've been around athletes, unfortunately, that smell like a whole pound, and I'm just thinking like, it's cool, I know you smoke, but it's kind of irresponsible from a standpoint of we're not there yet. You know what I mean? We're not there yet, so you're kind of giving up the secrets for everybody almost.
Right. No, so but this part is really important. The nuance of what you're describing, which is if we're going to do this at this time, like the early 2000s, we need to be careful and responsible because we're all at risk here. Are you doing the thing where it's like a paper towel roll equivalent and like some fabric softener in it, or like?
So, I mean, it just depends. I mean, I was always a big candle dude, so I mean, I always had candles. I'd always block the doorways as much as I can. Sometimes I used to run the hot water early on, but then it would get too hot in there. It would just cause more steam, and you would think, so who knows? Scientifically,
smoke.
It's maybe an urban legend that it actually worked, but again, I just tried to control it with, and then anyone who came to my room,
just make sure they were.
I would tip them
allies.
well, and yeah, just make sure just be very respectable when you're going in, I guess.
And right, so the consideration for other people, you don't want to get in their way, you don't want to make their lives harder.
Right.
And in the process, what you're also doing is like living in the future.
Right.
So the idea that you get to the NBA and there's now going to be this testing program, and the reputation of the program, again, this is David Stern's NBA. Yeah. So this program's reputation, did it even begin to scare you out of trying this?
I came in the league early 2000s, and it was everyone got drug tested during training camp one time. So it'd be a fact where everyone knows, okay, training camp starts Monday, Thursday, the dude's coming, and everyone's getting tested. So we would have our blunts or our joints rolled up in the car as soon as we get out of practice, like cheers at each other in the parking lot still. Because we knew it was coming. But I kind of
but that scene though, the idea that like it's kind of like, you know, it's almost like that's graduation.
Yeah,
day
like whose house
almost.
are we going to after practice? We're going to go smoke a couple, and
So it starts off with, that's going to be one test in training camp preseason.
To 4 randoms.
So I want to just generally situate again, like the kids out there, right, for like what's happening in the league at this point, because this is now David Stern. This is like the dress code had been implemented. And so the question of like, why, Matt? Why does it go from one predictable preseason test to 4 randoms?
There was issues with performance-enhancing drugs in other sports, whether it be football, baseball. I don't remember the exact years, but it was in the same
late 99,
early 2000s, mid 2000s, So they know there wasn't really a steroid issue in the league, but a league that's predominantly black. What is the stereotype drug that most black from back in the day, from rappers to street dudes, use? Weed.
Right.
If there wasn't a steroid problem, we weren't getting to like football and baseball tested for steroids. What can we test them for? Weed.
Right. Parallel to the dress code in its own way.
Kind of,
how do we clean up
under looking at our demographic, predominantly, 70%, if I'm not mistaken, somewhere in that black.
Super majority. Yep.
And it was funny to say all that, Pablo, because I remember I did fail a few times. You get 3 strikes. I was on like 2.75. A couple fails. You get a couple of, if you know it's coming and you're not prepared, you can turn yourself in. So I turned myself in. Luckily, they let me turn myself in twice. That's why I say you're only supposed to be able to turn. One, you get out of jail free card. Like, hey, you're coming to test me today. I don't have my drink. Cliff, Dirk, I'm coming home, baby. I'm coming back to the drug program. You know what I mean? So I'm coming back to the drug program.
So Cliff and Dirk, in case you were wondering just then, Cliff and Dirk are the names of the people who run the NBA's drug program, which I need to clarify with Matt by text afterwards. And Cliff and Dirk and the NBA first started testing for weed back in 1999 during training camp specifically. And as Matt alluded to, as a result, everybody knew when the test was coming. This may explain why only 12 active players out of 430 that first year tested positive, a super low number that the league publicly celebrated as proof that this whole slate of off-court marijuana possession incidents in the 90s were absolutely not reflective of the reality of the NBA. But in the 2000s, the NBA instituted what Matt has referred to as those 4 random drug tests, which meant that if you ever got a third positive test, that third strike, you got suspended for 5 games. And then the league would start adding 5 more games to each ensuing violation after that. And so Matt Barnes failed 1 test in 2007 with the Warriors and a second test in 2014 with the Clippers. And so instead of testing positive a third time, he just chose to re-enroll with Cliff and Dirk preemptively.
But I found out, towards the end of my career when I'm in there, from the superstars to rookies are in that program. And I remember at one point they told me more than half the league was in the program for cannabis. Half the league, 250 plus guys are in the. I don't know who. I know some of the people because we were teammates at times or whatever. But a lot of people for that. Period.
Right. Which is, I think, a staggering thing to realize on a couple of levels. So it's staggering on the level of like, okay, so what you're saying is that more than half the league has been involved in the program, meaning they have gotten popped or been summoned to the league office on a watch list of some kind. But what that also says is that beyond, okay, it's catching people, it's the prevalence of this. Was that surprising to you when you heard that it was more than half the league?
Yes, because it was just that many people in the, in a league of 400, a little bit over 400 people.
Well, it's like a silent majority,
right?
Literally. So the NBA has its own version of a war on drugs. And it's done, I think I'm with you on the level of, this originates from a PR perspective. A manicuring of an image to make it more friendly and comfortable for family-friendly mainstream America is the theory, right?
Yep.
But when it comes to those tests, that is the test that is getting more than half the league involved in this program. Who are the people doing the testing?
Oh, it's a company they hire. I can't even say what we used to call these people.
Why? Why can't you say it?
Just because we're in a different climate now. This is, you gotta think, we used to, we call them, for better word, watchers, because they would really, it came to a point because there was a point where there was, I'm not giving anything that people don't know all their way because the policy is completely
exactly. No, we can talk about it.
People used to have the fake, the prosthetic penises.
The Wizinator.
With the, someone else's pee in it. And that was what got you, that was urban legend. I heard about that in high school and first getting in college and this, and you don't got the fake. Like, nah, bro, I don't got the fake. Sorry.
The Wizinator is a lifelike prosthetic penis designed to simulate male urination. It is very easy to use and available in white, black, and Latino skin tones.
And then it would be a situation where sometimes you would just turn a cup of pee in so you can have someone else pee for you. So, I mean, obviously it started to evolve and they took it more serious. So it got to the point where you had to drop your pants down to your ankles and someone would, like, if this is me peeing right here, there's a watcher like.
This is Matt Barnes taking the podcast microphone and staring at it at arm's length.
Yeah, it's not barely arm's length. Like they're that close to you and they watch the pee come out of your body. You know what I mean?
So which is to say that the Wizinator became, and the chain of custody of urine became such a threat that they were like, we got to see it come out of your actual,
the source. We got to. Pablo, I kid you not, there's been twice in my career where I had to shit and give the pee, and this person had to come in the stall with me because they wanted to make sure that I wasn't. So I had to put the cup down in here while I'm shitting, and I would have to pee in a cup. Like if I'm
and
lying,
just nature calling.
If I'm lying, I'm flying. I'm just like, I'm not gonna be able to pee without someone else coming out. So I'm gonna have to go, and it happened twice in my career.
And they were there.
They were there, man.
So
it was serious.
I didn't realize that I would find out that Matt Barnes shit and peed in front of a drug testing NBA employee twice.
I don't even think it's they work for the NBA, but they're outside companies.
So as in they show up. How
the morning of they have to. So the morning. So it used to go. So once we were in the 4 randoms, we would get a call the morning of from our trainer. It used to say who was on the list, 4 to 5 guys. And I think they got hip to that. So they just started saying, okay, just 4 or 5 guys, but we're not giving you any names till we get there. So there could have, or may not been trainers that got paid to say who was on the list so we can prepare. I can't confirm or deny that. May have happened. May not. Allegedly is the word. So we got to the point now where it's just, all right, most teams are in group chats. All right, drug test guy to here today. So I would just always, every time that happened, which is probably, 10 times a year, 8 times a year, I would have to treat it like I was getting tested. So I always had a drink on me. So I'd have to get up early. I would take this nasty drink. And I'd drink 3 big bottles of water.
You're like entering ghost protocol.
Right. It's tough because especially you got to think if it's a game day or a practice, you're so bloated from having to take this shake and then drink all this water. And then you have to pee 3 times. And you have like a 6-hour window where you can pee clean.
Right.
And I did that for almost 15 years.
But you were ready. It was like people have like a to-go bag.
On call. So I'm eating clean. I'm eating a lot cleaner. So, you stay lean. So you get to your, because they say on average is a month.
Right? And well, the THC gets stored in.
Yeah. But they say on average, it stays just for a month. They say it stays in here a little longer. But this is pre being accepted. So it's just like I'm eating clean after the games. I'm in the steam room, or after the games, I'm even doing another workout just to sweat more. So it was a real job to do it.
I imagine at a certain point, these guys who are like contracted with the NBA, who are watching you shit in a stall with you, watching your dick in the most real way.
That sounds violating even talking about it.
It sounds insane. I wonder if there's even some sort of like camaraderie, which is like,
oh, we knew the dudes by name and everything. Like it was cool. We would be cool with them. We'd be cool with these dudes. We knew them by name. It kind of just was what it was. I mean, they knew they were watching, and we knew they had to watch our. So it was kind of just damned if you do, damned if you don't. We need this piece somehow. That's what it was.
Oh my God! It's a series of incredible sentences. When it comes to the estimates of like how many guys are enjoying cannabis in the league at the time that they were playing. So I've seen a couple of estimates. So obviously the most, I think, direct one is your estimation that more than half the league per these testers were in the program. But then, of course, Al Harrington is saying probably around 70% of the NBA when he played. Kenyon Martin was saying, Kenyon Martin played from 2000 to 2015, overlapping with you in large part. He was saying that, 85% of the NBA is.
I'm just saying only half the league was caught. That's not saying like, so a lot of people got, because you got to think, I got caught 2 times and I played for 15 years. You know what I mean? So there's a lot of times I wasn't getting caught.
Right. And so the question I have, which is based off of just that degree pervasiveness in the league, when you think about why they were doing it, what's your theory?
I don't know why. I can never speak to why they were doing it. I can only speak to why I was doing it. And it was something that it just became a part of me and to this day. And I feel like in life, whether you're a big time athlete or CEO or just a housewife that takes care of kids all day, like everyone has a vice, whether it be a glass of wine, whether it be harder alcohol, whether it be harder drugs, whatever it may be. And I kind of just felt like cannabis is not really that bad. And now that there's medical research backing it up, it was just kind of my vice. And, that's why I did it. Again, it was as an athlete, I wasn't someone who popped pills a bunch. While pills are, I've talked to football guys where, pills are like in big jars of, it's almost like little candy for them. But as for athletes, there was a problem for basketball. It was, we can get our hands on anything we want. I even got shot with Toradol to play,
which is again a football style remedy.
Yeah. So it's just like, it was always that or, cut that in half and smoke weed with it.
So the idea of like pain management, I wonder if people appreciate how much of a constant state of pain some players are in. Because football is like, well, that's football.
Yeah.
But the NBA, you're saying that
hardwood. Banging, falling on the ground, ankles, fingers. Obviously football's contact every single, but and then it's played on grass and it's a very physical sport. Hockey, very physical. But basketball is that hardwood, and we're on the ground a lot, and people don't realize how hard the ground is undefeated. You know what I mean? So it's just wear and tear. It's a long season, 82 games. So I was lucky to not really have any significant injuries, but it's just the wear and tear of just basketball alone is a lot on your body.
Right. And so coming into this, I was like, okay, if we're talking about 85% of the NBA potentially, 85% of the highest level basketball league that's ever existed, enjoying cannabis, I want to get to the question of how many of those guys, or at the very least, how realistic it is that some people were taking whatever form of marijuana that they were in order to actually play better, in order to be better at the game that they would be otherwise.
I wouldn't say that cannabis directly makes you better from an enhancement standpoint of an HGH or a steroid or something like that. I would say it enhances your play because you get a great night's sleep. It helps with inflammation. I smoked before I played, so I'm watching game film on Kobe, and I'm high, so I'm tuned into his moves. I know his rhythm. I know when he takes 2 dribbles right, he's going to stop and shot fake and get me up in the air. So I'm locked in.
You're stoned watching Kobe Bryant.
The task, whoever it was, Carmelo Anthony, LeBron James, Kevin Durant. That was my job. I had to guard the best players in the world every night. The best guy on every team I had to guard every night.
This is why you're the perfect person to talk about with this stuff, because your job was not merely to get onto the floor and passively be a normal person while stoned. It was to stop the greatest scorers in the history of the league.
Man.
But there are lots of people out there who are listening to this conversation. They're like, when I smoke weed, I need to sit in a couch and not move. And you're doing potentially the most opposite version of that entire spectrum of possibilities. I'm trying to stop Kobe Bryant from scoring 40. You're trying to stay awake watching the rest of Oppenheimer.
Right. It worked for me. It worked for me. You know what I mean? But there's times at a time where I would be getting, I'm not gonna lie, again, it did a lot of things for me. Mentally, focus, sleep, anti-inflammatory. But there's time, Pablo, after just a crazy day of game stress or family or issues, or I'm in Team Z and on Sports Center and I'm fighting with my former teammate and I'm getting divorced in front of the world, but I still got to play. Like sometimes
you're getting name checked by Kanye, Matt Barnes.
Right. So, I mean, sometimes I do just sit back on the couch, man, and just smoke and get high and just kind of just allow things to.
As your God-given right as a human being. Man. Absolutely.
God is good.
But the question of the science of this, right? Of like, what does marijuana help an athlete do potentially? So I've been reading into the science on this. We've talked to actually a couple of scientists.
My name is Angela Bryan, and I'm a professor of psychology and neuroscience at the University of Colorado, Boulder.
And their argument is, one of them is, this is not a performance-enhancing drug. And what Professor Bryan did in retrospect made a lot of sense. She set up this experiment to test the effect of cannabis on athletes by asking a runner to run the same route twice, once under the influence of cannabis and another time sober.
Check out this screenshot of my credit score. Just a few months ago, it was in the low 500s. That all changed when I found this little known loophole in the credit system that increased my credit score by a few hundred points.
Paying your bills on time raises your credit score, right? Wrong. In fact, this is the first of 3 major credit score lies you're being told by the big credit companies. Fall for any of these 3 lies, and it doesn't matter what you do. Getting to 720 and above will be a long, hard struggle, if you ever get there at all. In fact, if you're one of the 153 million Americans with a credit score below 720, it's probably because you've unknowingly fallen for one or more of these 3 deadly lies that the big credit companies want you to believe. Not only are these lies flat out wrong, not only do they make it nearly impossible to get a great credit score, but in many cases, fall for them and you'll send your score spiraling in the wrong direction. Which is why right now, I'm going to expose these 3 dangerous lies, tell you exactly what to do instead. Finally, show you the proven, little known, 100% legal trick that can raise your scores practically on command. And it's so easy and convenient. You can start using it as soon as today from the comfort of your own home to boost your credit scores in as little as 5 minutes. Doesn't even matter if your score is stuck in the 500s or below right now. This trick takes advantage of a little known loophole written directly into the consumer credit laws. So it's legally guaranteed to work for you. Believe me when I say, implement this 5-minute trick, you'll find yourself soaring right through this secret loophole in the credit system, where you can watch in amazement as your scores go to the moon in as little as days. So please stop whatever you're doing and go watch the special video I put together for you at the link you see on your screen right now. Listen, by now you've already seen all the different scandals in the banking and credit industry on the news. It's clear that this twisted system takes advantage of good people. This is what inspired us to fight back. Since then, we've been blessed to help more than 833,000 people learn how to improve their scores using this simple 5-minute credit score trick each day. So if you're ready to join the 833,000 people who have discovered these 3 major credit score lies and turned their financial lives around using the same 5-minute credit score trick you're about to discover, I'd like to show you exactly how you can use this simple trick too. Just click the link you see on your screen. It'll take you to a special video I created revealing everything about these awful lies and how you can use this shockingly simple trick to raise your credit scores faster than you ever thought possible. This trick practically forces banks and lenders to give you all the credit card loans and lines of credit you need to buy the things you want for yourself and your family at interest rates normally reserved for the wealthy 1%. No matter how low your credit scores are right now, all you have to do is click the Watch Now button and go watch the video right now. When I put it online, something amazing started to happen. Aside from being watched by more than 2.5 million people so far, my inbox started overflowing with messages from some truly amazing people all across the country, telling me how just by watching the video you're about to see and taking the steps I reveal inside, they change their financial lives forever.
My score was 595, and my scores now across the board is over 700.
My wife's scores jumped 124 points.
I'm now well into the 800s.
When I started, my scores were somewhere around the high 500s to low 600s. And within maybe around 6 months, I had climbed into the mid 700s. At that point, I was able to buy a house.
Ended up increasing my score by 60 points.
Follow the steps. I was able to take my credit score and raise it up 151 points.
My score has jumped up over 100 points.
I've been able to remove all 12 negative accounts on my credit report, and now my score is a 747. Coming from it being in the low 500s just 90 days ago, I mean, it's amazing. I want to tell my fiance as well. Her score at the time was in the low 500s as well. So I applied this information to her account. Now her score is over 730. This is a real blessing.
I can only help you if you decide to help yourself by clicking the Watch Now button below and watching this special video right now.
Under the influence of cannabis, people, they went pretty significantly slower in the cannabis front. The data we have collected suggests that, the organizations that ban cannabis on the basis of it being a performance enhancing drug are flat out wrong.
But what you're saying is that you found benefits personally when it came to how you proceeded on the court. And so one of the things that I'm curious about is when it came to playing in the game specifically, how do you think it made you better?
I just think it was focus. It helped me with my focus. But I'll even take it back. Say we're in LA tonight. I'm playing for Golden State. We're in LA tonight. We play Kobe and the Lakers. And then we have a back-to-back on a TNT game, which means everything's a little bit later. And we got to fly to San Antonio right after this game to play Tim Duncan. So we're getting to San Antonio. TNT game. It's going to go an hour longer. Everyone's got to do media after. It's going to take an hour and a half, 2 hours to get on the plane and actually in the air to San Antonio. We're not getting to San Antonio until anywhere between 2 and 4 a.m. So some people, it's hard to get off a plane, wake up, get on the bus, and get to your room and go right back to sleep. What are you going to do? Are you going to drink? You're going to take a sleeping pill. It's going to have you groggy now for 8 to 10 hours. It might mess up your pregame nap. Or me, I'm going to go ahead and smoke me one to the face and make sure I go to sleep, within the first 30 minutes, 40 minutes while I'm there and get a great sleep and get ready to guard Manu or Tony or whoever else I had to, guard that. I'm just glad that it finally has reached a point where there's medical research backing this up. And now, most of the major sports, if I'm not mistaken, test for it once or don't test at all for it.
Yeah, no, I mean, this is where we are living the future being the present tense now. So like, for instance, I just want to contrast this, right? So Al Harrington once said that he would never get high before playing like Kevin Durant.
But Al was my dog. So Al didn't even start smoking until like late. Al wasn't really smoking during the days like where we were, and that's the only reason I'm talking because that's our guy.
Yeah, of course.
But it was, some guys didn't, like Steven Jackson. That's someone I can say that, he was smoking while he was playing. He didn't smoke before games either. After games, he'll blow down with you. But before games, he wouldn't.
So this club that you were, of course, a charter member of, like, I'm smoking before a game. Explain what that ritual was.
So it would be, first of all, explain the post-game ritual is normally everybody. Or whoever's a smoker on the team after the game, we're burning it down. Right. Sometimes watch a game film, sometimes, order some food to the house, kick it, get ready to go out, or whatever the situation may be. Day of depends. If you're on the road and there's a couple guys that smoke, I've had guys come to my room and we'll after shoot around, we'll go to shoot around, shoot around 11 or 12 o'clock for an hour. We come home, I'll come home and, one of the teammates will come over to my room and we'll smoke one and then I'll take a nap, I'll wake up, take a shower, eat and go to the game. So within probably if I'm smoking about 1 or 2 in the game to 7, within a 5-hour window. So it's not like I'm smoking on the way to the game, but it was something that I would smoke and it helps me take because I like to take like 2-hour pregame naps too, sometimes 3-hour pregame naps. Help me take that nap, wake up, feel refreshed, get in the shower, eat, and it's time to go.
Right. And how set was that process?
That was 95% of the time.
Wow. And so the question of focus, I want to get to that because it's interesting, right? So as much as science is saying you're not going to get the benefits from weed as you would anabolic steroids, obviously, it's interesting that like a sport like archery, and this is where you got to go a little bit off the board to see the parallels. In Olympic archery, alcohol is a banned substance because the theory is that alcohol for some people calms their nerves. If you ever played darts, if you ever played beer pong, all of us have felt like Kobe.
Oh, one time, I'm nice at beer pong, by the way.
I have no doubt about that.
Even if I have to keep my elbow behind.
I was going to say the elbow rule is big. I would be enforcing the shit out of that.
Yeah, I'm ready for it. Next time we hang together,
that's right. Who else was on your sort of approach? Who else is like? How many other guys were like that?
There was a lot, to be honest with you. There was a lot. I mean, again, close team. I would only speak on people who are close. The Steven Jacksons. Who else can I speak of?
Yeah, who's okay with this now?
It just depends because people are at different places in their life. Like some of my OGs, like someone who kind of raised me was my big brother, was instrumental in kind of making it like this is a responsibility. You still have to do this and this and this. And he was someone who's kind of, again, big brother me when I first came to the league and I was bouncing around and not really set on any team, but still doing it because I knew it was something I was with. So I'll leave it at the names of Steven Jackson, but I played with some of the greatest players ever to play this game have, been involved with this plan and winning championships.
By the way, was there a sense as to like when you were in the league, were guys smoking? Were they eating edibles? Were edibles really a thing at that point?
Edibles were just coming along. I think my last year was 16, 17. So edibles had touched down. But I felt like you had to be really well versed in that space, and I wasn't. I had a couple homeboys that were they had edibles down to microdosing before it was, because they just first came to edibles, and microdosing came later.
Yeah.
But I had homeboys that were test dummies that would crash and figure out what's right. And then, you know, and these are other athletes. These are other teammates. You know what I mean? One particular teammate was a test dummy, was my dog. One of my own.
How does one end up the test dummy on an NBA team?
Just he's the one that wants to jump in there. You know what I mean? Like I said, edibles were new. Like we all kind of knew we all had our older stories of how we found out how, you know, the actual joint or blunt were for us. Edibles are different.
There's only one way to find out what the specific edible contains.
You got to jump in there butt naked and see what happens.
But I want to get to the question of like, okay, some people, they have a little bit of weed and they have a laughing attack, and God bless those people. Love it. But at the same time, for you, your reaction time wasn't slower.
No.
That's the crazy part. Is like that's for so many people unrelatable.
Yeah. Well, and then all this stuff, the psychedelics, the cannabis, the alcohol, it's everyone is different. So how it affects you is different. I was never a huge drinker, but I know that no matter what, I can probably take 5, 6, 7 shots and be okay because I'm 6'8", 240. You know what I mean? My body's different, and I completely know my body. You know, and I know that I can smoke a joint or two and be completely fine. You know what I mean? So everyone is different. You know, someone with the same makeup may not have that type of, but again, all that is a tolerance. So this stuff hits everyone different. So I would never, you know, this is what I did because it worked for me. I don't know what works for you.
Right? You're not prescribing.
I'm not a doctor. But if you want to have fun, come kick it.
When it comes to the strain, sativa, indica, what's part of your
I was always an indica guy because sativa was fairly new. Like it kind of caught on when I kind of started hearing about it. It was like maybe 13, 14, 15. But girls were kind of smoking it when it was first coming out. So I tried it. It was cool. It's a different taste. It's obviously a different type of high, but I've always been kind of a indica guy, which is, you know, the OGs, the purple, the kush, that kind of stuff is what I grew up smoking. Obviously, it's gotten stronger and better over the years. But
that's the relaxant as opposed to the upper of a sativa.
But on the flip side, it's just it's whatever works for you, and everything now is it's a hybrid because they're crossing everything now, so everything is a little bit of everything now. So it's really your preference. But yeah, I was more of an indica guy because that's what I grew up on.
What about your coaches in the league? How much of a understanding was there?
The only coach I really think had an understanding and cared to have an understanding was Nelly. Nelly was super cool. Nelly, Don
Nelson,
Don Nelson from the We Believe Warrior team. Right after we beat the Dallas Mavericks, Jack used to live in the same building as Nelly, and Jack was in the middle floors, and Nelly had the whole penthouse. So we went to Jack's, me, him, Barron, a couple other people pre-game because we're gonna hit the city before we go out, and Nelly wanted us to come up. So Nelly again has the whole top floor, penthouse, balcony, everything. We come
what a
up
ridiculous apartment complex.
So dope. Go up there, and right when we walk in the door, Nelly's like, "Hey fellas, Woody's in the back rolling doobies." And we're like, "What the?" We kind of like, "What?" He's trying. This is front of. There's some Hollywood stars there, probably executives from the team. We're like, "Holy shit, what did this man just say?" Yeah, Woody's in the back, and we go in the back, and Woody Harrelson's rolling up joints. So me, Barron, and Jack go in the back of our coaches on our coaches' balcony during the playoffs. We're still in season, and smoke weed with Woody Harrelson.
So Nelly, you discovering that Woody Harrelson was hanging outside of Nelly's apartment. How much of a surprise was it that Nelly was that kind of a smoker? Or did you know that by that point?
I didn't know that Nelly was really smoking. Nelly was just so cool and laid back. Like he would come to the practice at 10 or 11 o'clock with either a beer or a coffee cup, sometimes coffee, sometimes Crown, and then his dog that would piss everywhere. You know what I mean? So Nelly was just so with the flow that he just didn't give a shit. I think he knew that, you know, let these guys do what they need to do because, you know, as long as they show up, we're good. You know what I mean? As long as they're staying out of trouble, we're good.
It feels like historically the turning point in terms of just like, at least my understanding of how the NBA felt about this. It was an interview actually that the aforementioned Al Harrington did with David Stern. Yeah. And again, we've been talking about David Stern's NBA this whole time. David Stern and Adam Silver. Adam Silver was David Stern's deputy, but David Stern was
mafia boss.
Yes, the Iron Fist. And maybe Adam has a velvet glove around that Iron Fist, but David Stern.
Glove.
But David Stern was a terrifying person to everybody. And so when Al Harrington has David Stern basically on his couch with him, talking about what the next phase of the NBA's weed policy should be, David Stern says something that I truly, like, when I first heard it in 2017, needed to rewind.
Marijuana is now in the process of being legalized. I would think you should be allowed to do what's legal in your state. So now I think it's up to the sports leagues to anticipate where this is going and maybe lead the way. It's about deciding to take it off the banned substance list because it's no different than other subjects that may work or not work with particular players. I'm now at the point where personally I think it probably should be removed from the banned list.
He basically says, I don't think it should be criminalized anymore. The watchers can all stop watching.
Find a new job, fellas. And it was big. And again, 17 was the season I retired. So I mean, obviously, shout out to my brother Al Harrington. I definitely think opening that door was Al and you know, rest in peace, Commissioner Stern. And you know, saying at this point where we are as a, you know, as a world, as a culture, as a sport, I don't think it should be banned. And I think that was the beginning of people starting to talk about it. It all came to a head during the pandemic, where I don't, if I'm not mistaken, they didn't test in the bubble. And after that,
they just kept on saying we're not going to do it. It seems like when you listen to David Stern's words, what he's saying also is basically like, look, it's not just the culture that's changing, not just the science that's now becoming clear, like the economy around this is becoming clearer. And that part, the part about like, oh, by the way, now the owners can get in on this. That always felt like the actual quiet subtext of all of this, which is we can make money on this now too.
We can make money on it. Yeah, I mean, I don't know how many got involved as management or owners, but I know a lot of players. You know, you mentioned one being KD, and I remember KD and I used to have talks, and I said it's going to be more socially acceptable if a superstar would ever take that stance.
So did you smoke today?
Yeah.
And you're just fine?
I'm actually high right now.
I think he's kind of been that star that has kind of not come out and just I'm a smoker, but he's invested in it.
Yeah, he's a Weed Maps deal.
He's got a deal with Weed Maps, and him and Rich Kleiman have been very strategic on the way they do it. But it's like I said, some of the greatest to ever do it. Some of the greatest in the game to rookies have all kind of followed to it. And before, you think about you being a rookie and getting a test, and the team finds out you're really risking your job at that point. So I just think it's come a really long way. And as someone who risked a lot during my career to do it, I'm just very happy that these guys don't have to worry about it.
So the CBA, the new collective bargaining agreement, in April 2023, it was officially decided that after the pandemic and the bubble, into just like kicking the can down the road of like, okay, we're not going to test in 2021 or 2022, 2023. Finally, it's codified. Like the era is over.
It's out of here.
It's dead. And it also, relatedly, inside of that document, which is like almost 700 pages, is interesting. There is now text that allows guys to, as you alluded to, have stakes in various companies. And it just seemed like at that point, it didn't even feel like a thing. As much as you guys were behind the scenes, like trying to create momentum towards a change, by 2023 in April, and the CBA being codified that way, it didn't even feel like a fight. That's the crazy part. Like
it wasn't. You would think it would have been a knockdown, drag out. Guys are standing for it. People, the
traditional ownership versus labor versus management. It seemed like everybody realized this is fighting a tide that's turned a long time ago.
It's wasting our time. We're actually late to the party.
Yes, and that's the funny part about doing an episode like this now. Of course, like in celebration of the holiday coming up, of course, 420. It feels appropriate, but it also feels like, I mean, truly, like America's attitudes towards cannabis have changed so dramatically that it just feels. I live in New York. I said this to you before when you visited the city. I'm like, I walk around. And there's nothing stopping anybody from
it's not a big deal.
The science of it now, right? So there are all these scientists who are saying, we don't think it's PED, but we also want to acknowledge that there just isn't enough research into this.
We want to do more controlled studies where we compare forms like edibles versus, vaping versus smoking, so that we can really answer some of those questions about the impact they have on lung function, on breathing, and on how the exercise feels.
As crazy as the attitudes changing so dramatically towards also like family friendly now. Weed is more family friendly than it's ever been in ways that are unthinkable to people who lived through the 90s, obviously in your case. But it's also still a scheduled federal Schedule 1 drug.
Yeah, it's crazy.
It'd be nice if this drug was actually like federally decriminalized.
You would think.
So that science can officially dive in all the way on what does this do to a person from the athletic sports context. That would be nice.
And just a little deeper of, people with minor cannabis offenses are not sitting years in prison.
No question.
You know what I mean? So it's just like, we're out here making money on it now, and people who, did it as a means of survival to get by are rotting away in jail, or been killed over it. So it's just, it's a deep journey that we've been on. But I feel from a professional sports standpoint, I feel like everyone has a right. It's not that we have to promote the guys are doing it, but we're not testing for it anymore.
What's the next phase of this, do you think? I mean, you mentioned mushrooms before, you mentioned psychedelics before.
I kind of feel like honestly, the cannabis wave is kind of settled, oddly enough. I mean, it was the green rush for a handful of years. If you got in, early teens of the 2012, 13, 14, and it was, hit all-time high, and it's definitely settled, I would say, in the last 3 or 4 years. It's not that big of a deal anymore. I definitely think psychedelics are really buzzing right now, and guys are taking their cannabis money and investing in psychedelics. The world is just really open to some of these now that there's a little bit of research behind it, and people are realizing the benefits from it.
To bring it all the way back around, the question of whether weed is a PED. So it's a more complicated answer than the one that I was assuming you might give, which is to say that you did it in a way that made your NBA career better. But what I'm finding out is that it was helpful, it was performance enhancing in a sense that's not the same as I was stronger or I had this mental state even that was more advantageous. It was the way that you found peace in your life that allowed you to be the best version of the apple that many, many teams wanted you to be.
Absolutely. No, it was my vice, so to speak.
But I'm realizing also is that when it comes to weed as a PED, it's far more obviously, I think. It feels more like a podcasting PED, like a writer's PED. Like what it is for me is like, I have writer's block and I'm by myself. I need to hear from someone else with another opinion on this.
Yeah.
That someone else is me, but slightly higher than I am now.
I mean, to me, it's a creative. I feel like I'm a better form of me on it. And again, I played on it. I went on TV on it, whether it was ESPN or Fox or Sacramento Kings. And, obviously all the smoke, it speaks for itself. You know what I mean? So it's just like, to show, I think for athletes to show on several levels that it's not something that it used to be. It's going to gateway drug and you're a thug and you're this if you smoke and you're going to do this and you're going to waste your life. And it's just, it's more serious than that now. It's a medication now and it's something that's important to this world.
When you think back at the end here, at the fondest memory you have of the time in which none of this was allowed and none of this was okay, what makes you smile when you think back at like the before times?
The good times I had on the Warriors, the Clippers, the Lakers, smoking at your coach's house. How many people can say you're smoking at your current coach's house? I mean, it was just, I smile when I think about, obviously what that plant has done for me and the fun times, the fun times we had doing it. So it was a big part of my life. It's continuing to be a part of my life. And obviously now in moderation that I'm a father of 6 and have one on the way and I'm building a production company. So it's not as much as I used to, but it still definitely happens. And it's still, for those similar reasons that I gave back when I was 15 years old.
Right. Is there anything you want to say to the guy who had to watch you take a shit while peeing at the same time?
Who are you, bro? What's your name? Were you able to look at yourself in the mirror and tell your wife that I had to stand in a stall with a former player as he shit so I can get a little bit of pee out of him?
Yeah.
Weird.
Yeah. On that note, Matt Barnes, thank you for
Thanks for
coming
having
through,
me.
man. Absolutely.
No doubt.
This has been Pablo Torre Finds Out, a Meadowlark Media production. And I'll talk to you next time.